listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith.
Greetings, young Squire Sprouts. Today is the 25th day in the first month in the year of our Lord 2025. My name is Sir Rolland, and you're listening to Saturdays with Sir Rolland on Catholic Sprouts, where every Saturday we discuss the art of dragon slaying. Today we celebrate the conversion of St. Paul the Apostle. As you may well know, St. Paul is the featured saint in our book, The Yellow Dragon of Sloth, because Paul lived his life with passion and zeal and spread the faith to the ends of the earth. His letters make up a large part of the New Testament scriptures we have today. And so Paul's impact on the world has reverberated for generations, and he is perhaps the greatest evangelist to ever live. Remember, he had no internet, no radio, no modern modes of communication. He had to preach by word of mouth under severe persecution and hardships, traveling from city to city, trying to make ends meet by making tents because he didn't charge people for his missionary work. He endured constant attempts on his life, prison sentences, stoning, scourgings, shipwrecks, and countless other sacrifices and sufferings, all for the sake of spreading the good news of the gospel to as many people as he could. But remember, Paul wasn't always zealous for the gospel of Jesus Christ. He began as a zealous Jew who hated the Christians. He himself persecuted and even killed the Christians because he thought what they were teaching was false. One day he had a divine encounter. On the road to Damascus, he literally saw the light of Christ, and it knocked him to the ground and blinded him. Jesus spoke those famous words, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" He blinded Paul so that he could see the errors of his ways. He humiliated and humbled Paul so that he could conquer the red dragon of pride and the orange dragon of envy. He forgave Paul so that he could help him conquer the blue dragon of wrath and offer forgiveness and peace to others, knowing he himself had been forgiven for the horrible things he had done to God's holy people. He called Paul to severe fasting in his days of blindness so that he could learn to conquer the indigo dragon of gluttony and the violet dragon of lust to prepare him for the hardships he would later endure on his journeys. There's so many lessons that us dragon slayers can learn from the conversion of St. Paul the Apostle. Today I'd like to focus on a couple of lessons about this story of St. Paul that inspires me to slay dragons. The first lesson is that nobody is out of reach from the saving power of God. That is why dragon slayers do not judge or condemn their enemies as the blue dragon of wrath wants us to do. We love our enemies as Jesus commanded and try to help save them. No matter how evil the deeds of people and how much they annoy us or how they persecute or harm us, we should desire their salvation, not their condemnation. Some of the worst sinners in the history of the world have become some of the greatest saints, St. Paul being one of them. Forgiveness and mercy are important to God, and so they should be important to us as dragon slayers as well. St. Paul learned this lesson well, and in his letter to the Colossians, chapter 3, verses 12 and 13, he said, "Put on then of God's chosen ones heartfelt compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another and forgiving one another. If one has a grievance against another, as the Lord has forgiven you, you must also do." But perhaps the greatest lesson that St. Paul's story teaches me is the value of redemptive suffering. In that same letter to the Colossians, St. Paul wrote in the first chapter, verse 24, he said, "Now I rejoice in my sufferings for your sake, and in my flesh I am filling up what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ on behalf of his body, which is the church." So what is redemptive suffering, and what does St. Paul mean in this verse? Well, he doesn't mean that Jesus' sufferings and sacrifice was somehow not enough. Jesus gave everything and he saves us all. So what is St. Paul saying that is lacking in the afflictions of Christ? Well, I think it's our participation in it. This is so important for us to understand as dragon slayers, so pay close attention. Jesus gives us, you and me, with all of our weaknesses and struggles, the power to help save souls. Did you hear what I said? We get to help get souls to heaven. Jesus didn't just save Paul and forgive him, he sent him on mission. Paul understood his role and his ability to help get souls to heaven, and so he knew that in this life there's not a second to waste. To be sure, Jesus doesn't need our help to save the world. He's infinitely powerful, but Jesus allows us to help. Think of it this way. Does your mom and dad make you do chores? I hope so. How old were you when you first started doing chores? Probably not that old. Maybe your mom and dad make you clean up the dishes after supper or fold the laundry. Now, I'm willing to bet that your mom and dad could probably do those chores much faster and better than you can, at least when you first started doing them. They could probably get it done quicker if you just stayed out of the way. But your mom and dad make you do those chores anyway, probably not for their sake, at least not at first, but for your sake. You see, God is a father, and good parents don't just say, "Hey, you little rugrats, you're small and helpless and not very strong, so I'll tell you what. Since you're so weak and helpless, I'll pay for all your meals and give you everything you need, and you just accept my help and stay out of my way." No, doing chores teaches you to serve. It helps you become a better version of yourself. It helps you grow in virtue. And guess what? It can actually help you not only slay dragons, but save souls. That is what redemptive suffering is all about. Listen to this verse from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 1521. Suffering, a consequence of original sin, acquires a new meaning. It becomes a participation in the saving work of Jesus. We've been talking about how our goal as dragon slayers is to become saints. Well, we become saints by helping other people become saints. Every day we encounter small little trials and sacrifices and sufferings, whether it's doing chores or doing homework or sitting in the car or waiting for dinner to get done, or maybe it's just being bored. You might have just thought these were annoying parts of your day, but not anymore. What if I told you that these were opportunities to save souls? Saving a life is a pretty noble mission. Last summer, I went fishing with my son and my buddy Sir Topher and his dad Sir Amroth. When we caught our limit of fish for the day, we came in and pulled up to the dock. Not long after, when we were there trying to get our boat out of the water, we heard a splashing sound. Sir Amroth looked over and happened to see an elderly man in his 80s fell in the lake and couldn't get out. He was able to grab his hand and pull him to shore. And on the way home, we thought, wow, nobody else was around. If we weren't there at that time, that guy would have died. It was pretty cool knowing that we saved a life. Well, every day, God gives us many opportunities, not just to save lives, but to save souls. When we unite our little sacrifices and sufferings to the one true sacrifice of Jesus, it becomes a participation in the saving work of Jesus. And when you come to understand the power and potential you have, your life will flood with passion and purpose, just like St. Paul. And you'll be willing to endure whatever trials come your way, knowing it's for a great cause. This week, I challenge you to reflect on this idea of redemptive suffering as St. Paul did. When you go to Mass, think of all your sacrifices and sufferings that week and place them on the altar with your mind so that they can be united to the one true sacrifice of Jesus. What a beautiful mission we have as dragon slayers. Together, you and I can help save 1,000 souls by the grace of God. And don't forget to say thank you to your parents for making you do all those chores. And until next week, I'll leave you under the protection of St. Michael the Great Archangel, St. Joseph the Terror of Dragons, and Mary, Queen of the Angels, Our Lady of Grace, and the woman whose seed crushed the head of the dragon.
That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God created you to be.
Hey, parents and kids, don't forget to check your Training Guild email for our Resource of the Week. And if you're not in our Training Guild, please register for free at extraordinarymission.com/dragonslayers. And remember, listen to Catholic Sprouts every day, including Saturdays with Sir Rolland.
This podcast is part of the Spoke Street Network. For more great podcasts, visit spokestreet.com.